All right, I chose to do my field test on the Pro Agility test. This test is used to measure an athlete's agility level. So basically, agility is just starting, stopping, and changing of direction as quick as you possibly can. The Pro Agility test, if you're doing other field assessments, it needs to be at a specific place so that the results are as accurate as they can get and showcase the athlete's true agility level. So the Pro Agility test, it's kind of more a low taxing assessment. It's done in about 5 seconds, and you're not really getting full sprinting potential. The only other tests that you would do before the Pro Agility are non-fatiguing tests, such as like a skin fold, body fat, height, weight, vertical jump. Other than that, like for example, if you were to do a muscular endurance test or a sprint test or anything like that, then when you come back to do the Pro Agility test, you're going to be a little tired, and your score is not going to be what it would be if you were at 100%. So that's just something to note. That way your results are as accurate as we can get them. So yeah, the Pro Agility test is often called a 20-yard shuttle because in reality you're running 20 yards. So I will go over how to do that. So to start, it's a relatively easy way to set up. All you need is pieces of tape, a tape measure, and somebody to run a stopwatch for you. So you can tell instead of tape, I just have towels set up because I didn't want to put tape down. But so you would start with one line here. You would measure 5 yards. You would come back, make another line, so they're even, and then another 5 yards past, you would make another line. So you're having a 15-yard gap with 3 lines, all 5 yards apart. So again, there's a line, 5 yards, another line, 5 yards, another line, so 15 yards. So to start, you're going to have the athlete straddle the middle line, and they're going to have their feet about shoulder width apart, athletic stance. From there, you're going to have them drop their butt and drop down, athletic stance. And then for this, it's important that you start out in a 3-point stance. So kind of like a football offensive or defensive lineman 3-point stance. So you're going to be down here in a 3-point stance. From here, it's important you don't want a lot of weight on your hand. You don't want to be leaning forward because when the instructor says go, if you have all that weight leaning forward, when you take off, you're going to kind of go not a straight line. You're going to go a little diagonal forward and to the side. And that's just going to add time to your score. So you want just a little bit of pressure on your hand so that if somebody were to come and swipe your hand away, you would still be in that 2-point stance then. So, like I said, feet shoulder width apart, butt back, 3-point stance. So notice how I have my right hand down in the 3-point stance. That means that when the instructor says go, I'm going to turn and open up to the right. So again, my right hand's on the ground. When the instructor says go, I open up to the right. If I had my left hand down, I would open up to the left. It's just important that whatever hand is on the ground, that's the side that you run to first. So we'll say go. So I'm in my stance. 3, 2, 1, go. I'm going to the right. The instructor says go. I open my hips up and cross my left foot over, and I'm going to sprint, sprint, sprint till I get to this first line. So what I'm going to do here is there's 2 ways to do it. You can either put your hand on the line or your foot on the line. When I do it, I like to tell people to put their hand on the line because if your hand's on the line, it forces you to get down, and then your next turn, you'll have more power and you'll get a better score because you're lower to the ground, you have more power, it's easier to transfer. But again, you can put your foot or your hand on the line. It's just important that if you put your foot on the line, that you put your foot on the line on this side and on that side, and for every subsequent time you do the test, that way it just stays as accurate as possible. Same thing for hand. If you use your hand every time. So once you start, you open up to the right, you come and you tap the line. Then you run back this 10 yards all the way to the other side. And then this time I'm going to use my left foot or left hand, place it here. Then you're going to open up, cross over again, and you're going to sprint as fast as you can through this middle line. So to sum up, you start with your athlete straddling the middle. You run 5 yards. Depending on what side of your hand, depending on what hand you're using. So again, I use my right hand, ran to the right line first, pivot the other way, run 10 yards to the far line, come back and sprint through the middle line. So something to note too, that if you noticed, I started off facing this way. You want to face this way the whole time. So a lot of times you'll get people that they start this way, and then when they come to a line, they'll cross over and turn, and they'll be facing opposite the direction that they started at. You don't want that. So if you start facing this way, every time you touch a line, you're always facing this way. That's just something that'll save you time, and that's just properly how it's done. A few tips if you want to tell your athletes so that they can get the best possible score. It's important to stay low when you start and in and out of each turn. So when you start, you don't want to stand up and be vertical right away. You want to come out of it, stay low, out of the start and out of each turn. And also, when you get to the line, when you're turning on each side, you want to keep your foot on the inside of this line, because if your foot's on the outside of the line, I mean, obviously that's just more distance, so it's going to be more time. But if your foot's out here, your center of gravity is wide. But if your foot's in here, your center of gravity and your base of support, base of power is right under you. So that just allows you to be more explosive and faster, pushing off the other way. So again, place your foot on the inside of the line. And the last thing, when you're finishing and you're sprinting, a lot of people will try to take a bigger step because they think that'll shave a couple hundredths of a second off. But when you're coming up to the finish line, you just want to keep your normal form and sprint all the way through. No need to lunge or take a bigger step or anything. Just sprint all the way through. So that is how the Pro Agility test is performed. And then the Pro Agility test is good for athletes, whether in a predominantly agility used sport, so like basketball, football, or soccer, where you know they're constantly changing direction, constantly starting, stopping, making cuts. Agility is a good and useful to try to get better and do all these exercises to get better and improve that agility. So yeah, like I said, basketball, football, soccer, kind of the main ones that you need. That way, if you test them at the beginning and middle and end, and you can keep doing the Pro Agility test, and then to see if your program, what you're doing, is getting their scores better, to see if they're becoming better athletes in that specific sport. Other agility tests that you can use instead of Pro Agility, if you want, are the T-test and the hexagon test. Those are two examples. They're basically all kind of the same procedure. One's not more impactful, higher impact. One's not going to be more of a toll on you. They're all kind of the same from an intensity standpoint. So that's kind of something to note, where it doesn't really matter which one you use. The only way I would say to switch and not do the Pro Agility is if you had a just limited space, because the hexagon test you only need about a 4 square foot area of space, whereas the T-test you need 15 yards one way, 10 the other, and for the Pro Agility you need 15 yards of area to work with. So like I said, all the agility tests they're almost exactly the same. They differ on how far you run, what direction you run, kind of the hexagon test you jump. But for the sake of this, it's kind of all just the same intensity. So the only thing would be for the hexagon test is just you can perform it in a smaller area. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is it's important when you do the Pro Agility. Like I mentioned, you start in a 3-point stance. You want 2 trials going each way. So if I have my right hand down, I'm going to do that same thing 2 times, and then I'm going to do the same thing with my left hand on the ground. That way I'm opening up each direction, getting 2 trials and 2 readings going each way, and then you just take the better score of each direction. So at the end, you'd have 1 score with the right hand lead down and 1 score with the left hand down. Talking about validity and reliability, the Pro Agility test can be valid. It just depends on your definition of agility. So half and triplet in the Essentials of Strength Training and Conditioning, they refer to agility as starting, stopping, and the change of direction as rapidly as you can. If that's how you view agility, then the T-test is a perfect test for that. You're starting, you're stopping, you're changing direction as quick as you can. But another definition of agility that they use is it's still the starting, stopping, and changing of direction with the involvement of a sports-related stimulus or kind of a cognitive aspect, such as like anticipation and the anticipation of something. So if that's your definition with the cognitive aspect, the Pro Agility test isn't going to be the best test because there's no cognitive really assessment in it. It's just besides the instructor saying 3, 2, 1, go. That's kind of the only time you use your brain because you know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly where you have to go. So like I said, validity, it can be completely valid, just depending on the definition that you use for agility. Same thing with reliability. Depending on some circumstances, it can be reliable, it cannot be reliable. So for example, reliability is just like same accurate findings from subject if they do it multiple times. Being reliable is that you're just having the numbers, the results would be pretty clustered together, no outliers or anything. So if you were doing the Pro Agility test and you had, let's say, like motion sensors, something like that, where it picks up the movement right away and you can eliminate the stopwatch, then that's going to be 100% reliable because it's not going to matter unless something malfunctions within the motion sensor. All the tests, the numbers, they're going to be the same because it's just whenever the athlete truly crosses the line and when they start. So that, in that sense, it would be reliable. But if you're using a stopwatch, you have an instructor using a stopwatch, that's not going to be completely reliable based on the user error of the stopwatch. So for example, some people, when they say go, they'll hit the stopwatch right when they say go. Sometimes some people will hit the start the stopwatch after they say go. So right there, that's 0.1, 0.2 seconds of error. I mean, that doesn't seem like a lot, but for a test like this where the whole score is about 5 seconds, that's a big deal to athletes and for the score. Another reason is like when people cross the finish line, it's very subjective. Some people would say they crossed it 0.1 seconds sooner than the next person. So again, using like a motion sensor would eliminate that margin of error. So can be valid depending on the definition of agility that you use, and it can be reliable depending on how you measure the time. So that's pretty much all about the Pro Agility, and yeah, thanks for watching.